You can change the structure of how utilities operate, and California was a leader in this, so that the utilities will actually make money by producing less electricity. It's a bit of financial magic that I don't think I can go out into without a chart, but basically it does work. Building design is really important. As I mentioned, the world uses half of its energy in buildings. We need to start thinking about buildings as systems. Certainly with sensing, control, data processing, we can make buildings a lot more efficient than they are right now. And then finally, for stationary sources, we need to set a price on carbon emissions. The Waxman-Markey bill, which is working its way through Congress right now, is a good start. It establishes a cap-and-trade system that for the first time will set a firm cap on U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. It's targeted to go to 17% below 1995 by 2020, so not quite the administration's goals, but not bad, pretty good start. When that happens, what you're going to see, I believe, as a technologist, is an enhanced deployment of natural gas. And you may know there's a wonderful technology story in the gas business about how U.S. gas reserves have increased by a factor of 2 or 3 in the last decade because of new technology to get gas out of shale. We're going to see an increase in onshore wind. Wind right now is about 1.2 or 1.3% of U.S. electricity. It will probably grow to 20% by 2030. We will see, and I think we will need to see, a sustained, if not increased, deployment of nuclear energy. Right now, nuclear power is the only reasonably economic and scalable emissions-light technology for making electricity. We're going to need to deal with the issues of spent fuel, next-generation nuclear reactors beyond the light water reactors that we have deployed at the moment, licensing process. All of these are issues that the DOE is working rather significantly. And then finally, we're going to need to deploy carbon capture and storage power plants that will use coal, since coal is not going to disappear. Coal is about 40 to 50% of U.S. electricity generation. We need to learn how to capture those emissions and store them under the ground where they won't enter into the atmosphere. Now, finally, how do we get started on all of this? I think what we need, first of all, is education. This is a university, and so saying that here is like motherhood, but it is really true. And it's not only the education of the people who are at the universities, but it's the education of the public, and it's the education of the decision makers. We need to educate people to focus on the lowest cost and most material measures. Doing something that isn't material squanders resources. It makes you think you're doing something when you aren't, and it wastes time, energy, and brain power. For short and midterm technologies, I think we need to avoid picking winners and losers as much as we can, level the playing field, and let the markets decide. And for longer term, the DOE is supporting pre-competitive research in gas hydrates, in fusion, in advanced fission, solar cells, biofuels, wind, and so on. A little bit more in the economic sphere, business needs a reasonable expectation of the price of carbon. When a business is going to make a commitment to invest another $1 billion in an emissions-free power plant, it needs to have pretty good confidence that that $1 billion investment is going to be worth something 20 to 30 years from now. That's a lot of changes of administrations and Congresses over 30 years. So we need consistency. And then finally, we need in the university and research community to recognize and act on the importance of energy research. Let me just say a word about that in closing. You know, new technologies are going to be absolutely essential in meeting these challenges of security and emissions. We need the technologies to be material, to be economic, and to be available in a timely way. And part of the challenge in technology development is to have that interface between the business and policy world and the research world, to know what can be deployed, to lay the paths for deployment, to understand the social and economic consequences of various technologies. in that sense, you know, energy is very different. People often talk about the Manhattan Project as an analogy. It's very different. Okay? Yes, we need concerted multidisciplinary efforts on these problems, but you've got the public, you've got business, you've got economic considerations, none of which were really present at all in the Manhattan Project. The Department of Energy has mounted and is proposing a succession of efforts to try to get at new research models for dealing with this. You will have heard about the Energy Frontier Research Centers, and I know some are here in Michigan. These are concerted multi-faculty or multi-investigator efforts at the fundamental aspects of various parts of the energy problem. Materials to convert heat into electricity, materials to convert sunlight into electricity. You will have heard about ARPA-E, the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Energy. This is a part of the Department of Energy. About 6 weeks ago, the department put out a broad call for proposals. These are supposed to be somewhat out of the box, rapidly prototyped, high impact, high risk proposals. We've got back a very large number of them. We're in the process of reviewing them and hope to be able to fund them later this year, probably early fall. And then finally, in the President's FY 2010 budget, there's a proposal for a set of energy research hubs. These are integrated pushes on various energy technologies that are meant to span from basic research all the way through to the economists and social scientists to try to develop material, timely pieces of technology that can help. And then finally, in energy, you will see in the 2010 budget proposal a program called Re-Energize, which is a partnership with the National Science Foundation, roughly $115 million from the DOE, to do energy education at the undergraduate, graduate, postdoctoral level, as well as workforce development and teacher training. So we are trying to focus the department's efforts on energy, which is something of a shift from past years. Marshaling the research efforts, education, national labs, universities, and so on, to try to make a really big difference here. And the stars seem to be aligned, and I am optimistic that we're going to be able to show some progress in the next 4 to 6 years. Thanks much for your attention.